So we'll invite the next speaker, Dr. Yoshioka. He is graduated from Hokkaido University in 1991. And after graduation, he had a position in National Institute of Animal Health. Now we call it the NARO Institute of Animal Health. And he received a PhD in 2000. And from 2004, he's now the chief researcher, senior researcher, chief researcher. Okay, today's title is Establishment of Practical Embryo Transfer for Fresh or Frozen Embryo in Pigs. He has a good knowledge about the embryo culture, and also his research theme is the embryo transfer. So he gives a good result today. Now it's okay. Okay. Yoshioka-san, お願いします。
As the chairman for kind introduction, and I'd like to thank you very much, organizing committee, for giving me this opportunity to present today. So, the topic I would like to discuss today is the establishment of practical embryo transfer for fresh or frozen embryos in pigs. But actually, the content of these topics may be not the establishment or in part or still not practical use. Embryo transfer in pigs is an essential technique for the production of piglets derived from in vitro fertilization and cloning or other embryo manipulation. Of course, the most important benefit of embryo transfer in swine industry is the ability to introduce new genetic stock as replacement herd animals with minimal risk of disease transmission and reducing cost for transportation. Pigs for pork production in Japan, as well as other many countries, is mainly made on the commercial pork production, commercial farm. Generally, it is carried out by the fatting piglets born from parent stock, breeder stock, to which is introduced from GP farm to commercial farm by the transportation of live young animals. However, transporting live animals from GP farm to commercial farm takes high cost, and there is a risk of disease transmission and failure of acclimation to domestic pathogens existing on the commercial farm. When embryo transfer technology could be applied for the introduction of the parent stock to the commercial farm, we can obtain parent stock, breeder stock on the commercial farm with more safety and more reducing cost. First successful in pigs was performed in 1951, and at present, on average in surgical pig embryo transfer, the pregnancy rate is about 60%, and litter size is 6.5 piglets has been reported. However, compared to ruminants, the pig embryo transfer for commercial and breeding applications has been used only to a limited extent. This is due mainly to practical implications of surgical procedures for both embryo collection and transfer. So, the utilization of the ET technique in swine industry, surgical procedure should be applied. So, my today's topics is in vitro production of porcine embryos, but Dr. Gruben has been talked about this topics, so I will just simply and developmental competence of in vitro produced embryos after surgical transfer and non-surgical transfer of porcine embryos. This slide shows our in vitro production system for porcine embryos. Usually we use immature oocyte obtained from slaughterhouse ovary and frozen so the ejaculated semen separated by purple gradient. The culture medium for IVF and IVC a similar basic component based on the concentration of inorganic element and energy substrate in the pig oviduct fluid, but with some modifications depending to each culture. Our developed culture media for pig IVF, IVP system are all chemically defined. The use of chemically defined media can lead to improvements in the reliability of media formulations, reproducibility of result, and biosafety aspects of protocols by elimination of protein preparations, which have a risk of being contaminated with pathogens such as virus and bacteria. And all these media can be purchased from the Research Institute for the Functional Peptide for in Japan. We are studying on the improvement of the in vitro production efficiency of porcine embryos. And we have found these factors improve or stimulate in vitro development of porcine embryos. This slide shows the result of in vitro fertilization and embryo development of pig oocytes using a total 70 batch of semen from different boars. These are ejaculated frozen soul semen, and these are frozen soul semen collected from Tainan, and these are ejaculated semen and then stored at 50 degree liquid stored semen. We could obtain blastocysts by the IVF and using all batch of semen, 17 batch of semen. And also the optimal condition of IVF should be determined for every batch of semen, but our developed IVP system can be used for various semen, and it has widespread utility, I think. Production of offspring, the piglets by embryo transfer is the only method for validating the normality of IVP embryos. This slide shows pregnancy results after surgical transfer of porcine IVP blastocysts in our laboratory data. Overall, transfer of 18 to 25 blastocysts per recipient to 11 recipient resulted in following rate of 100%. However, following rate and piglet production efficiency, following rate and average litter size appear to be low when 15 embryos were transferred into the recipient. In pigs, maternal recognition of pregnancy occurs during day 12, around day 12 of pregnancy by the separation of estrogen from the trophecta, embryo trophecta. And it is thought a minimum of 4 to 5 viable embryos is required for maintenance of pregnancy or establishment of pregnancy during this time. So if we transfer the small number of embryos to the recipient, the estrogen treatment to maybe improve the establishment of pregnancy after embryo transfer. This table shows the effect of EDP. This is which is long-active estrogen drugs to recipient after surgical transfer of a small number of porcine IVP embryos. When 7 blastocysts were transferred to recipient and then treated 10 milligram EDP once or twice, all of the recipients become pregnant and followed. Piglet production efficiency is greater in EDP treated recipient. So I think EDP treatment to recipient after embryo transfer may improve for piglet production efficiency when a small number of embryos were transferred per recipient. We also tried to purification of IVP blastocysts. In this experiment, we use a chemically defined purification solution and a cryotop method for purification. When 30 blastocysts purified and were transferred into recipient, or this is day 5 blastocysts. Day 5 means 5 days after IVF. And all recipients became pregnant. So blastocysts produced in our IVP system have developmental competence to full time even after purification. So, but for piglet production on the farm using ET technology, application of non-surgical transfer of IVP embryos has some benefits, such as supplying to the embryos at low cost, repeated use of recipient, and no need of surgical special facilities. So we developed a catheter for deep intrauterine embryo transfer to increase the convenience of ET technique in pigs. This catheter is created from polyethylene and has adequate flexibility. The 0.25 ml straw containing embryos can be connected to the end of the catheter, and the embryos infused with transfer medium into catheter and through the catheter into the uterus. And we can we prepare the movie, the procedure of surgical embryo transfer. It is uploaded on YouTube site. like this. But this movie caption is in Japanese, but you can maybe I think you can understand the image of non-surgical embryo transfer. Non-surgical embryo transfer, firstly we investigated the effect of asynchrony between donor and recipient estrous cycle on pregnancy after non-surgical transfer of IVP blastocyst. Briefly, IVP blastocyst on day 5, at 5 days after IVF were transferred into recipient, whose estrous cycle whose estrous cycle derived after 1 to 3 days delay compared to that of donor embryos. So the piglets were born in all treatment groups, and no significant difference in pregnancy and following among the treatment. However, piglet production efficiency was greater in recipient whose estrous cycle was asynchronous to that of donors with 1 day delay than in others. So we also investigated using in vivo derived embryos to application of non-surgical embryo transfer using in vivo embryos. Briefly, blastocysts collected after 5 or 6 days after AI. In this experiment, 15 to 20 in vivo blastocysts per recipient were transferred, and recipient whose estrous cycle delayed 0 to 2 days after that of donors. As a result, following rate and efficiency of piglet production is higher in recipient transferring day 6 embryos and day 5 embryos. So age or developmental stage of in vivo embryos may affect the pregnancy result after non-surgical embryo transfer in pigs. So to establish the system for parent stop introduction using the embryo transfer technique in swine industry, application of cryopreservation of embryos is important. So we confirm viability of in vivo derived embryos after vitrification. In this experiment, we use MVAC method for vitrification. This method is developed by Dr. Misumi, National Livestock Breeding Center in Japan. And this method is without direct exposure to liquid nitrogen to avoid the risk of contamination with pathogens from liquid nitrogen. So while this experiment was performed at different three experimental prefecture farms, viability of embryos after warming appeared to be good, and no difference between the farms. Next, when we vitrified the vivo embryos collected from individual donors who are transferred surgically on the previously shown three farms, piglets were obtained on all farms. This vitrification of embryos and non-surgical ET technique will contribute to establishment of the parent stock, breeding stock reproduction system using ET in swine industry. So this is summary. In the present study, we can produce piglets by non-surgical transfer of both in vitro produced and in vivo embryos using a deep intrauterine catheter. But pregnancy and following rate by non-surgical transfer of both IVP and in vivo embryos blastocysts were low compared to the surgical method. When IPP blastocysts were transferred by non-surgically or surgically, the litter size appeared to be low compared to in vivo embryos, using in vivo embryos. So improvement of the non-surgical embryo transfer techniques and also IVP blastocyst quality will be needed before industrial application to swine industry. So finally, I show the cost performance from the introduction of breeding stock using the conventional transportation method. It's transportation of live animals due to horse to commercial farms. And the conventional transportation method in Japan take 90,000 Japanese yen average. And compared to this, cost for production of parental stock on the commercial farm using ET technique was 38% cost down. It means 62% of this. So this value was calculated based on the result from surgical transfer of vitrified embryos collected from individual donors. But even this result is lower than the conventional method. So when the pregnancy outcome result by non-surgical embryo transfer get better, its cost will be able to reduce more. And this work is a member of this work, and thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you very much. So do you have any question or comment in your work? Please.
Thanks for your presentation. A lot of work. I'm just interested in the time span for the transportation and the medium that you use to hold the embryos. Can you make some comment, please?
How much time for transportation?
Within 24 hours, 48 hours?
My image is good. One is transportation in fetal nitrogen content. And another one is after warming, transportation to provide embryos to the commercial. So after warming of purified embryos to transportation for 24 to 48 hours, because in Japan, transporting system by hard truck is developed maybe almost maybe within 48 hours in all of Japan area. So my image is living embryos transportation is take within 48 hours.
Okay, do you have a... Is it okay for you? Please. Okay. Do you have another question or comment? Okay, thank you very much. So it's a time for the open forum, but the schedule is very tight. So we have 5 or 10 minutes for it. So especially for the first speakers, I did not accept any question or comment. Firstly, do you have any question or comments for especially for the first speakers, Dr. Hirao and Dr. Swine? No, Dr. Hirao no, Chris. Sorry. Yes. So. Not yet. So, do you have any? Hi.
This is my sort of request for you. Please make a piglet from in vitro grown oocyte. Yeah, that's very important. From the purpose is maybe the piglets on the ground. That's very important. And also, I understand for research work, to set up the system, in vitro growing system is very important too. But I think these days, strongly, the production of piglets on the ground is very important. So I'm asking.
I would say you can bet on it.
Okay. That's all I'm asking.
Yes, so do you have another comment or something? Hi, Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question to Dr. Gruppen. In the beginning of his presentation, he showed clearly how important it is to have high quality oocytes subjected to infant maturation, IVF, and embryo culture. My question is that, is there any knowledge, or do you know any information if it is possible that we use basically low quality oocyte to improve its development and competence during in vitro maturation in the IVP system? In other words, if I have a compromised oocyte, can I improve it? Or is it just that we have to maintain its original competence during function?
Yeah, that's the $64,000 question, isn't it? The limitation of production systems are the intrinsic quality of the starting material. And I think some recent studies in mice and other species have shown that the benefits of using the oocytes accreted factors to improve the quality of poorer oocytes during in vitro maturation. Also the EGF-like family peptides. Some recent work shown in mouse oocytes is very exciting, where they're improving poorer quality oocytes to achieve 80% blastocyst rates in the mouse. So I think there are a couple of potential possibilities for improving poor quality oocytes in the pig.
A related question that I have also for you. So he recommended the improvement of the oocyte quality, but another way it's necessary to select the good quality oocyte before the culture. Is it possible or not? Do you have any idea or comment about it? It is very difficult, I think, so.
Just the basic parameters that I mentioned. So looking at the morphology at the start, the number of cumulus cell layers, which we've known for a long time, follicle size, is clearly important. Things like cytoplasmic morphology, I don't think is a good indicator at all, because we've done studies to take oocytes where the cytoplasm looks very patchy, and we thought, compared with the oocytes that have very even cytoplasm, and we found that the patchy oocytes actually change in their morphology during maturation and can actually be quite good oocytes. So morphology is, not so good to go by. I could just give a simple answer and say that the analyses, in-depth analyses using the omics technologies, when it gets down to the individual oocyte level, perhaps we can find large-based markets that way.
You recommend the toroscope for human clinic. That is one way to select the good oocyte.
Mature oocytes.
Immature oocyte. But from my understanding, it is not working for the porcine oocyte. Am I right?
Yes, you can view, but it's obviously not as clear because of the issues with the cytoplasmic droplets.
Okay. So do you have another question or something? Okay. The time, the schedule is very tight. I would like to close this session. Please give a big hand for the all speakers. Thank you very much.
And let's also give a big hand to our moderator, Dr. Kazuhiro Kikuchi. Before we pause for our coffee break, I'd like to call on our director, Tsai of FFPC, and Dr. Nagai to hand out the plaque of appreciation for the speakers this morning and this first half of the afternoon. Okay? First, I'd like to call on our keynote speaker, of course, Dr. Heriberto Rodriguez Martinez, who delivered the keynote speech on current status and perspectives of artificial insemination in pigs. Okay, thank you. And then we'd also like to call on Dr. Tetsuji Okazaki, Yes, and I'd like to call on their respective moderators, Dr. Christopher Gruppen and Dr. Keisuke Edashige to join us in the group photo for session 1. Thank you very much. For session 2, oocyte and Embryo Factory, I'd like to call on our first speaker, Dr. Yuji Hirao. Thank you. Dr. Christopher Gruppen again. Dr. Thomas Songfai. And Dr. Koji Yoshioka. Okay, group photo with their moderator, of course, Dr. Kikuchi. Thank you very much. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings to a close session 2. We will start with session 3 after a 30-minute coffee break. We will be back at 3:30 in the 3:30 or 3:20. Sorry, 3:20. Okay. Thank you very much. Let's see each other for session 3.